Now, one thing I would say, as an LGBT person, there are some spaces or some settings that you get really kind of a different glimpse. So say for example, when I was growing up, there was always, not always a rule, but like, my family kind of had those rules of like, oh, if you have guys in your room, keep the door open, or like, unless there were like many friends, like if I had like 4 or 5 friends in my room, I might keep the door shut or something like that. But like, every now and then my mom would send my younger sister in or something like that. Like, or, my brother would be, I hang out with my brother a lot too. We had a lot of friends in common. So, even if I was in the room with my door shut, I'd be in there with my brother and maybe another guy friend, so things like that where it's like, okay, there's some guys, but also I'm with my brother. So like, I didn't really have like the strictest of rules of people saying like, don't do this, don't do that, don't, don't, you know what I mean? Of people saying not to do stuff. I don't think I grew up with, I did, but people weren't like verbalizing it like, oh, there's going to be some kind of sexual temptation or whatever. Like, nobody was really wording it like that in my house. Like, but I did kind of know, I did have some kind of different rules around guys. Like, I noticed that once I got to be a little older, my folks were a little weird about me having male friends or whatever. To me, it was just a confusing thing because I was, I didn't have that many male friends that I had like crushes on or anything. There was a sprinkle of them, but there weren't that many guy friends that I was interested in enough at all for them to be like, there just weren't that many. And the ones that I did have, like, we were homies first, and again, like I said, my brother was usually around hanging out with me, and so we would hang out together a lot too. So I think for that reason, people didn't really think of, like any kind of crushes and things like that. Like, we weren't really having crushes on each other, me and my friends that much, it wasn't really like that. And I remember, I wasn't really like the other females that I grew up with, and so I was kind of like, I kind of had this weird dynamic because I was friends with like most of the guys and they weren't, and I always just found it weird. I was like, it was just all weird. Like, there was so much weird stuff that like I didn't know how to make sense of, because I was like, I don't understand like why these female friends, these female classmates, when they like a guy, why don't they just go tell him? Or why don't the guys who are interested in girls ever talk to them? It was like they were so separated out. And also because there was so much gossip and like zero privacy at that school. It's like, I remember one day one of my friends went and asked some girl out in the corner, like they're sitting in the corner of a classroom in like 7th grade or something, and he asked her to the banquet and she says yes, and the whole class knows within like 2-3 seconds. And it's like, if she would have said no, it's like, damn. And then she said yes, and so he was really happy. And then everybody was like talking about it for like a couple days. And in my head, I'm like, what is the big deal? Like, it's a banquet. Like, people are going to ask each other to go on a date to the banquet. But it was just kind of like that. Like, people were so, like, up in everybody's business. But I think those types of judgmental environments do create, when there's a lot of shame in an environment and a lot of judgment in an environment, it creates a lot of gossip because people are like, I don't want people looking at me and what I'm doing in my life to make me feel bad about it. So I'm just going to make sure that we keep the focus on everybody else so that they feel bad about what they're doing, or that so people don't like assume that I'm not following the rules or whatever. Like, there's kind of like that weird pressure that people have on them to kind of like keep all eyes off of them just so you can kind of get some sense of privacy. And for me, it came from, I just basically didn't dabble with any of the guys in my immediate social circles. It was always guys who went to different churches, different schools. Maybe I'd see them at sports league. That was usually, with the guys that I would meet, I was more comfortable with, like, okay, they're not in my immediate setting, like when I see them, all eyes are not on me when I'm hanging out with them, or when I go to the mall or whatever the heck we were doing, or when I'm having a conversation, and if I want to just go hang out with them, me and them alone, we're having a good time together and there's some form of privacy versus like that whole religious environment where everybody's attached at the hip kind of. But yeah, like I don't know. I feel like it kind of gave me like the small town vibe within a huge city. It was like the religion itself made this like small town feel to it. A lot of people lived kind of in the same general area. But yeah, I don't remember feeling particularly comfortable. There weren't like a whole lot of people that I could talk to about things that were like any kind of sexual in nature type of stuff. Like usually when people would bring it up and it would be people who were older, it was always like, don't do this, you better not be thinking and doing these things. So I was just like, well, I'm already thinking about them or whatever, so like I'm like, what the hell, like I'm not gonna like I kind of felt like there was something weird with that, because I was like, this can't be right, you know what I mean? And like I feel like I was lucky that I had this youth pastor that was kind of like a reasonable human being and kind of like understood humans. And he was probably the one person that I grew up with who would talk to us kind of like, okay, like, get it together kind of, but you're gonna make your own decisions, and here are what those decisions might, like, what kind of next phases those decisions might result in. And he kind of would lay things out more in like a more practical explanation versus like, don't do this or you're gonna go to hell, or don't do this or everyone's gonna learn about it and you're gonna like be like judged for it and all this kind of stuff, and like have like a weird reputation. There was not like that whole scare tactic. Like he would be like, this is what the religion teaches and this is what, he would kind of talk about the benefits of how the religion would help, with having that kind of mindset, but also realizing that not everybody gravitates toward that type of teaching and thinking and lifestyle of that religion. And if you're not gonna practice the religion with the kind of sexual restrictions, then if you decide to go do them, this is what that might look like. And that the church itself is probably not going to be very open-minded about it, but he's not the type of person who would be like, don't come talk to me about it, or don't like he would say like, I would rather you guys weren't running around having sex with people, but you know, he understood that that wasn't really like realistic, that wasn't gonna be the reality. And yeah, man, I just kind of, when I think about it, I'm just like, there was definitely that, like there was a lot of deep rooted stuff there's a lot of stuff that became deep rooted that was just like, wow. Like maybe not always in a good way, but yeah, like that was kind of like the experience I had being around people who were virgins. It was mostly because of the religion, and so I don't think I knew that many people who were virgins that weren't religious. And once I kind of had a lot more LGBT friends, probably like closer to like my late 20s or so, like I've always had LGBT friends, but it was like within that religious context as well, so it was kind of not something that we were all openly talking about. But yeah, like I've had LGBT friends, especially when I got older and moved, and there was kind of this, I did kind of notice, oh, like if you're LGBT, people start assuming that you're very like an ultra sexual person, and I never really kind of fully understood why people thought that way, but it happens too. If you're a black person, people assume that you're kind of ultra sexual, and then if you're an LGBT person, people assume that about you, and then there's just all these different layers. But it's very interesting, when people aren't doing that a lot, like kind of what that looks like in the LGBT community. I don't know if there are a lot of spaces for people to really talk about that, or just be that's just kind of how it yeah, it's just, I don't think people really talk about it that much, like about the virginity side, or the asexual side, or just not having sex on a very regular basis, not being very like sexually active, and it's almost like expected that people should be, and if you're not, it's kind of like it's kind of weird. I don't think it's weird. I'm not saying that the people are weird. I'm just saying, like, other people see it as weird. It's like, wait, you're gay and you're not having sex. Like, I remember once, dude, I don't know, like, because there's things that I remember that I'm just like, what? Like, why were these conversations coming up? Like, was it because I was very, so say like at work, for example, when I used to work by the border, and I used to have work friends, I mean, I still do, but I mean, I used to have specific friends from work that, I never really talked about dating while I was at work. I never really talked about anything like that. But outside of work, I would have friends that I would hang out with. I would hang out with these friends. I would talk with these friends. And we would share a lot about our dating lives. And, there was one person in particular who was very inquisitive and was always asking questions about, like, oh, like, are you having sex with this person? Or did you have sex with that person? Or did you get laid? Or, like, whatever. And I think they didn't really know that it was inappropriate. And once they learned it was kind of inappropriate, they kind of stopped. But, it was kind of like, I was always just like, why does this keep coming up, And I was kind of like, whatever. And then there are just some instances. Like, I remember being at, like, a friend's birthday party and, or Halloween party or something. And being, like, with this person, like, being, like, not with this person, but being in a household of people that I worked with. And some of those people were asking me, asking each other personal questions, because it's like, we're not at work, we can actually talk, and I remember this one person specifically was asking me, like, when's the last time you had sex with somebody? So I kind of, like, gave an answer, and I guess they were, like, shocked at my answer, I guess, and like surprised, and they didn't really get more into it. But I was like, okay, like, that's weird that they would ask me that question, because they were like, well, yeah, we don't know anything about you. And then that's kind of the stuff they would ask me, is like, are you dating? Are you, like, having sex with anybody? Like, that. It's like, is that really what you need to know about me? And I remember another time being at this, like, pool party. It wasn't a pool party, it was a birthday party, but we all jumped in the pool, and somebody asking me that same question, and I answered it, and some other person kind of responded, and it was kind of interesting, because I was like, I kind of, I guess that's kind of how I maybe understood that, like, the straight people around me were expecting that, that I should be having a lot of sex. Like, that's just how it should go. Now, I would say, I guess something I started saying that I never finished the thought on, and then I'll wrap this up. But basically, I would say there was there is this dynamic, if you are interested in the same gender, you are in places where you would probably have more privacy than what you would have as a hetero person. So, for example, I'm not saying these are, like, inherently sexual places, like bathrooms, locker rooms, that kind of thing. They're not inherently sexual places. But if you had, like, this kind of secret, say if you're a woman and you had this, like, secret kind of girlfriend, and say if you went to the gym together and there's showers at the gym, or if you're in the locker room, in college or whatever, and there's showers there, there's bathrooms there, there's dorms, even if you're in a non-co-ed dorm type of setting where it's maybe every other floor is, like, male, female, male, female, or every other building is, like, or side of campus, like, one side of campus is men, one side of campus is women, or different buildings are male, different buildings are women, or whatever. However it's divided up, because I don't know of many college campuses where you have co-ed roommates, living on campus in the dorms. I don't know about that. Maybe on campus housing, but I don't know about dorms. I don't really know. But anyways, yeah, there's usually that kind of, you know, you'd be sharing more spaces with that person, you know, if you did have a crush or someone you were dating or someone you were kind of just casually seeing or had an interest in. Like, you'd have more places where you wouldn't be banned from, like, going into each other's rooms or, like, taking a shower at the same time in the same place. Or, you know, there are different places like that where it's like, you know, like I was saying, like, in my household, people would say maybe, like, don't keep the door shut. But if I had my female friends over, nobody cared if the doors were closed. Like, nobody was thinking about what are they doing in there. They were just kind of like, oh, like, it's your female friend, and so you can just hang out, you know, and, like, you get more privacy, you know, that way, from having friends of the same gender hanging out with you. And, you know, there wasn't so much like, what are they doing? We can't have these people mingling with each other in a private space, you know, without chaperoning and all that. It's like, first of all, so for me, my situation was always different because I grew up hanging out with my brother a lot. So there were a lot of things I was allowed to kind of go do because it was always me and him together. And then also, I did have a few female friends. Most of my friends were guys, but I had a few female friends. And, you know, I didn't really have a lot of limitations with where we were or were not allowed to hang out. Like, if we were playing sports and went to the bathroom at the same time, that's just how it went, you know, things like that. And so I don't know. Yeah, I kind of realized that. Like, I've been trying to, like, think this through, and I'm like, yeah, when you have friends of the same gender, you know, there's a lot that, you know, especially if you're in a religious culture, people aren't really gonna, like, hassle you about being alone together too much. I mean, maybe they will if you're doing it too much for them to be comfortable with it, and they're homophobic. Of course, they're gonna be like, why are you guys always together? But it's like, yeah, with my female friends, it was never like, why are you guys always together? You know, like, we hung out together every day of the week till college. I think till we both moved out of the same city. Like, we moved to, like, different cities, different states even. And we hung out every day. Like, we saw each other at school all the time. We went to church all the time. I don't think we played sports together on Sundays all the time, but so maybe Sundays we didn't see each other. But I've had friends like that are female that I would see, like, every day for, like, 10, 20 years, you know, like, and I don't know, you kind of form relationships with people when you see them all the time, like that. Like, that's one thing that I have that I know is rare for people who are raised in a city. A lot of people don't have friends that they've known since, like, kindergarten, second grade, third grade, that they still talk to, that they still live near to, that they still can hang out with, that they can still, you know, I think I've got some friend groups, some friends that I grew up with that I trust pretty deeply. There's a handful of them. The others, I'm kind of like, all right, we're homies, but I kind of keep a distance because they're very gossipy. But I know that they are, so I'm just not open with them about things that I don't want everybody to find out, because they will tell everyone. Always, they will always tell everyone. So it's just kind of culture. It's a cultural thing, you know. It's not a good cultural thing, but to me, it's not a good cultural thing, but it's a cultural thing. Because of the religion, it's a cultural thing about that religion, the gossip and things. But yeah, guys, you know, I definitely feel like this is a topic that, you know, I might need to talk about when I'm more focused. But yeah, it's definitely a topic that I've found to be pretty challenging, and you know, just reflecting on things, I'm like, wow, you know. But yeah, I mean, if people are virgins like nowadays, you know, and it doesn't matter how old you are. Like, there's that movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin or whatever. Like, I know plenty of people who were virgins past 40. Like, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with people not wanting to have sex ever. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do feel like maybe it's possibly more rare. With the people who say they're having sex, I often wonder how many of them are. Because it is kind of one of those things, like, nobody's going to go out of their way to confirm. And then, you know, there's also a lot of pressure. Like, I think there is a lot of pressure. Like, I sense it, you know, and I'm not even around people or friends who are very pushy about stuff. At least lately, I'm not at all. And the people who were like that in my life, they've definitely stopped being that way. So I don't really have a lot of people in my life who are like fully like that. But I do have, you know, a lot of friends that are a little bit curious about, you know, my dating life and such. And one thing I do notice is that I'm not equally comfortable sharing that with everybody. And so it does get a little complicated sometimes, where I'm like, I have some friends that, you know, I'll catch up with. Like, so say for example, I've got this guy friend in San Diego that if he comes out here to LA and meets a couple of my friends and maybe meet somebody that I might have a crush on, because I've probably mentioned this person to him before, or a couple people to him before, it would be like a continued conversation of, oh, he met this person or whatever, you know. And then yeah, so I kind of was doing yeah, I was kind of thinking that way, where I was just like, yeah, like, this is so it's so interesting. Like, I find it to be so interesting that that you know, I find it interesting that there's those topics, you know, of an interest. Like, and like I've mentioned, you know, I'm a shy person, so when I have a crush on somebody, I'm usually kind of like in the back, like, just kind of like observing. I'm not usually gonna approach until I know that I'm really trying to approach, because I don't like dealing with cleanup. I don't like dealing with, you know, I jumped into something too early and this person's messy and now I gotta like try to back out of this. It's like, I like to know that a person's like at least decently solid, that if we start getting to know each other and it's just not working out, they're not gonna like slash my tires or something, you know. I just need to know that things are like gonna be smooth. I don't need drama, you know. So I tend to kind of keep a bit of a distance until I kind of know somebody better. But I do definitely get a sense of pressure from some friends, not all of them, but a couple friends, a little bit, that are pretty regularly, like, oh, are you dating anyone? Are you dating anyone? Are you dating anyone? Are you dating anyone? It's like, Jesus, no, I'm not. And they seem a little interested in my life. And I get it, we're friends, so they're going to be interested. They're going to have interest in what I do, or things like that. So, that's just natural. But also I'm like, dang, So yeah, that's kind of my take on things, when it comes to virginity, which is a topic that we don't really discuss much, because I don't really know how much traction that topic gets, but maybe it will get a lot of traction. I don't really know. We'll see, but I feel like people don't talk about it much. Like, usually when someone hears someone's LGBT, they assume that they're, like, incredibly having a lot of sex. I think that is a stereotype. It's not too uncommon, though. Like, I know a lot of gay people that have a lot of sex, but I know a lot of straight people that have a lot of sex, too. So, that's just kind of how it is. But I think there is kind of this more, like, there's a bit of an ease somewhat as an LGBT person to kind of get to get dates or get social interactions. I think there's more of a that's more I don't know, like, I feel like in LGBT spaces there's a high level of mingling with people that you might not know, and that is a very open environment. It's a very it's just really hard to explain, but like, there aren't a lot of social rules. Like, I think I learned this a weird way, that, like, when I go into straight bars or clubs, if I just start talking to a guy, then he might think that maybe I'm interested in him or something. And so if he's not interested in me, we can't really have a conversation because he doesn't want to lead it on or whatever. But sometimes I'm like, dude, like, let's just talk about the Dodgers. Like, I literally just wanted to talk about baseball. Like, I'm not hitting on you or whatever. But it's kind of like, I could kind of get that sense that I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to be talking to you because I'm not interested. Or you can't continue talking to me if you're not interested. Or if you are interested, you're going to talk to me. And if I'm not interested, I shouldn't continue talking to you. It's kind of like this weird thing that's like, I feel like in gay spaces, you just talk to whoever looks interesting next to you. And if they seem nice or friendly, you'll talk or not. And you'll just have a conversation and you'll, vibe together and keep it pushing. You'll move on, you'll bounce around, you'll just meet different people or not. But you'll meet different people and you'll just talk to them. And, that's pretty normal. Like, I've gone to clubs or bars on a regular basis where I've just talked to whoever the heck I was talking to, whoever I was around. I'd be there with friends, and then my friends would leave and go home, and I'd stay and just hang out and just talk to whoever the heck was there. If they wanted to keep talking, we'd just keep talking. Like, that's just kind of how it was. Like, and I don't do that nowadays as much, but I definitely had a time period where I was just like meeting all kinds of people, and that was not an issue. There was never like, oh, like this expectation of like, oh, you're talking to me and I'm not interested, so I have to act weird so that you know that I'm not interested. There was never any of that. It was like, if you're nice in a conversation you're just chilling, people are always respectful, and usually, not always, but you know, even if I'm at a club and I don't really want to dance with somebody, they're never like offended or like mean. They're just like, I've met some people that were just like, let's like, just like, like the last person I had to kind of turn down from dancing because I didn't really want to, because I was kind of not in a headspace to want to do that. But I was just kind of like, we met and I was like, I thought they were really nice and fun. And there was another person, who I was talking to that, or was talking to me, but, I thought they were really nice and fun. And, I met some really nice and fun people. And, I don't think they were offended. I found them to be very attractive, actually. But, it's like, well, first of all, you're friends of my friends. And second of all, you're really drunk and I'm really stoned. And it's really hard for me to, like, really want to engage. But, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard for me to meet new people too, especially right now because I'm like between cities, and so it's not really the most ideal time for me to be just like meeting people. Like it's hard for me to want to meet people in LA and hard for me to want to meet people in San Diego because I'm not really fully in either city enough to really do that. But I don't really know. But it's morning. It's the sun is out, but I'm gonna rest. I'm gonna go and get a little nap in before I try to eat breakfast, and then I'll get on with my day. I'm gonna work out. Not right now, obviously, not right now. It's still early enough that I can go back to sleep, though. But, yeah, guys, thanks for listening.